We are living in fascinating times, aren't we? The world is going through an exponential transformation, and we're going to talk about that today. You can't deny it. 20 odd years ago, 25, 30 years ago, we were all talking about transformation, but I wasn't seeing it across the planet. And today, you can't help but see change happening all across the world, especially with what's been happening in the US lately, but it's been happening here down under. And my guest today is from New Zealand, so we're going to chat to her about what's going on in New Zealand. Stay tuned.
You got to accentuate the positive. Wow, I feel good. A little bit of feel good goes a long way.
You're listening to Karen Swain, teacher of deliberate creation, accentuating the positive, showing you a way to a better life.
Accentuating the positive, it's not just fad, it's sanity. Who in their right mind would accentuate anything else?
If you feel like that's what you want to do.
Welcome to another show, Accentuating the Positive with Karen Swain. Always a blessing to be with you. And I see the beautiful Shirley's on Rumble with us, and Sun is there on YouTube. Hey, how you going? You're listening to Karen Swain on the United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network on 107.7 and 105.3 FM syndicated radio all across the US and Canada, and we are streaming on 8 different platforms today. We're on Rumble and Odyssey, Twitch, YouTube, Facebook. We're all over the place. So it's so great to be with you. As I said, this is all about transformation and change and evolving our world and evolving ourselves. And I've got the gorgeous Joanna Walden with us. Welcome to the show, Joanna.
Thank you, Karen. Thanks so much for having me.
Joanna is in NZ. She's in New Zealand. It's evening in the States. It's morning in Australia, and it's just past lunch in NZ, right?
Right. Yes.
covering all the time zones today. And Joanna and I have just been chatting, as you do, before we go live, talking about what's been going down in New Zealand. There's been a lot of political changing actually here in Australia too. Somebody sent me a message about a bill that was blocked in the Senate that was going to increase more censorship online, and so freedom of speech is winning. And lots happening. But let me tell you a little bit about Joanna's journey. And Sun Dragon says, "Hi, Joanna." Let me tell you a little bit about Joanna. Joanna spent 20 years working in a high-flying advertising career in New York, London, and Melbourne, while secretly exploring her passion for the unseen world of energy, spirit, and consciousness. Inspired by a series of mystical experiences in her teenage years, Joanna explored everything from transcendental meditation to quantum physics on a global quest to find her purpose and ultimately her true self through the process of self-realisation. Joanna quit her old corporate life to start a transformational business, coaching business, and began sharing her knowledge and voice with the world. She uses heart technology, travels to sacred sites, channeled wisdom, consciousness practices, ancient gong and sound healing to navigate her path and guide others back to mastery. A transformational specialist, she calls herself, multidimensional channel. Joanna is a paradigm shifter who likes to question the old teachings in the spiritual world for our evolutionary process. And she is the author of a couple of books, and I just loved the name of one of the books, which is called The Inside Hustle, which came out in 2020. And this is really the story of your journey, Joanna.
That's correct. Yeah, it's the story of my personal journey of evolution. It actually starts off in New York, where I was living at the time, and I just moved there, and then 9/11 happened, and I had a bit of a experience of expanded consciousness, and then it's a transformational travel memoir. So it takes me and the reader follows my journey basically after that, and then when I sort of decide to leave my corporate job in New York and do the Camino to Santiago to sort of see if I could get zapped, which is what Shirley MacLaine called it in her book, The Camino. And awaken some of these other aspects of myself that maybe could help me figure out what my purpose was and what I was meant to be doing on this planet. So one of many adventures in the Inside Hustle, which is very irreverent and humorous and quite entertaining.
I just love the name because we're all hustling with ourselves inside. We're all on an inside hustle. So I want to chat about that. And your other book, which came out last year, is The Beautiful Radical Truth, Wisdom from Other Realms.
Another realm,
so this is, or another realm. So this is more of a channeled book.
That's right. It was a bit of an exercise during one lockdown. I got up at 5:30 every morning without the intention, because I usually channel for clients or for my membership or for my cosmic activation ceremonies or for myself. But I wanted to just blank slate, like what wants to come through, not meaning a book, not meaning it for anybody. And literally just did that every day, never read back on it. And then, oh gosh, maybe 9 weeks later or something, I just stopped doing it. And I can't remember why. I don't know if we got out of a lockdown or I just got bored or something happened, but I just shifted right out of that and forgot about it for about 18 months. It was buried away in there until something was tapping me on the shoulder energetically to dig it out and see what it was all about. And I started reading it. I was like, what the holy mackerel, this is pretty amazing. So, and I realized that it was flowing together perfectly, and all that it needed was a couple of last chapters, and it was actually really a book. So there you go. Mm.
Well, you are also, I'm just going to upload this, you're also one of the speakers this December in Uluru at the Cosmic Consciousness event. So
Yes.
I'm just going to bring this up and show people Cosmic Consciousness Conference at Uluru, 20th to the 22nd of December. Mm-hmm. And Catherine and we were just chatting about that before, and I said, how did you find out about the conference? I've already interviewed her. How did you find out about the conference? Asked her 20 questions. And she said that she saw it online, reached out to Mick and Catherine, and Mick and Catherine are like, oh, yeah, we're very picky about our speakers. But they picked you, darling.
No, they did in the end. After seeing everything I was up to, I was quite chuffed. I'm really excited about that, being in Uluru. And I'm going to be talking about heart technology and taking people through an activation to help unlock their divine blueprint and potential. So it'll be some teachings all about heart technology, what it's all about, and then it'll be a channeled message of wisdom and an activation, one of those multidimensional energy activations that I channel through as well. So it's going to be really, really fun to do that at Uluru with all these other amazing speakers and frequencies, and I'm super excited about it.
Well, big things have been going down in Uluru. I mean, I speak to so many teachers across the planet, that are all talking about ley lines and Uluru and heart centers and chakras of the planet and grids. And so many people have done the pilgrimage to Uluru to activate ley lines and tune into the grids, the light grids of the planet. I've been listening to this story for years and years, but there have been a couple this year that have said that there's like big activations happened in Uluru this year. So I was there in 2022. I'd be interested to go back and feel what has changed. I mean, we're seeing, as I said at the beginning of this, we're seeing transformation. We're seeing change. I'm seeing change. I don't know if everybody else is, but in our political systems, which are so slow to change, especially down under, there's been some wins for freedom. And there's change. My guide said to me that next year, I was asking them about stuff, and they said next year there will be massive change across the planet, massive transformation. With change comes challenge, because we like to stay in our lane and stay in the routine of life, right? And
That's
then
right.
Change happens and it messes us up. Oh no! So we've got a transformational, challenging year. I think next year, numerologically, it's a 9, which is all about evolution and transformation and moving out of an old system into a new system at the end of a 9-year cycle. So, here we are at the end of 2024, moving into 2025, and you're going to be up there in Uluru with the gang. Mm-hmm. Calling in the new year around Christmas time. Be exciting.
Over the solstice. Yeah, it's going to be really powerful portal there. Mm.
Yeah, it'll be a great time. And if people are interested in traveling all the way from the States to Australia, maybe you've always wanted to see the Rock or see Australia, and you're wanted to hang out with Alison says morning girls. Diane says hi, looking forward to this conversation. Yeah, if you always wanted to see the Rock, I reckon it would be a great time to go. I've got a link under all the different platforms with a $50 off the conference if you want to check out Uluru, travel from wherever you are in the world. You might be anywhere in the world, and go to the Cosmic Consciousness Conference and see Joanna's talk and all the rest of them. Yeah, I had the mentalist on a couple of weeks ago who does stage hypnosis and sort of mentalism stuff. He's quite amazing. He's quite an extraordinary young man. But that would be another great talk. So let's get into your journey. You're in the corporate world. You said to me that you were like a kid and you were exploring transcendental meditation. Obviously, your mum was into it. What happened?
Well, my mum was quite spiritual. She very much was exploring everything related to spirituality and consciousness, and she was quite tuned into the harmonic convergence in 1987. And, you know, that was definitely a part of my upbringing, was her exposing me to all those kinds of things, and there being books of channeled wisdom around and all of that. And I was truly fascinated by all of it. I was really, really just open. And even though my dad was completely the opposite, you know, it was fine for us to all be exploring our different pathways. And, you know, things really kicked off for me when I was about 18, and I'd gone to meet some friends and pick them up from a bar, and on our way to a dance event. And, you know, I saw a guy across the bar, and I just knew I needed to talk to him. And I basically went over, and at the time I smoked cigarettes, and I asked him for a lighter. And even though I had one in my pocket, and he said, "I've been waiting for you to come and talk to me. I've got some messages for you." And he started talking all about my purpose on the planet, in the shift in consciousness that was going to be happening and was already kind of underway, and that he really recognized that me as a being, as this infinite being, and a, you know, multidimensional you know, being of light, essentially. And I just remember feeling so elated and on such a high. And we were talking for quite some time, and he was doing some adjustments, and, you know, at the end of it, you know, my friends were sort of dragging me to go to this dance event, and I said, "Oh, you know, will I ever see you again?" And he said, "No, if you've got everything you need, you won't see me again at all." And so, yeah, it was just a really interesting time where I was able to, just kind of explore, although I did go into a corporate career after that, and literally just forgot all about it. Even though I was doing that career and I was coming home and doing channeled messages and all that kind of stuff, I literally just I just sort of went in a different direction, back into corporate advertising, which I'd studied in school and my dad was doing. And so I sort of went that route before I had the courage to really follow what was really moving within me and the passion in my heart, and move into the space of that direction, which I'm now working in now, which is consciousness transformation and this visionary work, and working in the multidimensional space and bringing through messages of information that are containing frequencies that help people recalibrate, shift and lift, and reconnect to that mastery within. So it's been a really interesting journey along the way. I just have been exploring all of it, really, all the different facets of me, and unlocking various bits and pieces along the way. And all of my work is extremely activating. You know, it's, it seems to allow people, when I guide them just into the spaces within themselves, they're doing it for themselves, but it activates them really deeply. And, you know, when I'm doing my channel work, I'm seeing different geometries, and I'm seeing different ways to connect things up energetically, and seeing where to go in. And, you know, sometimes we're working in the DNA. You know, I did a cosmic activation ceremony over the weekend, and we were working with the, intergalactic portal of the heart, and connecting it back up to the pineal gland, and sending all sorts of different coding from the galactic and cosmic consciousness level in that activation. So, but it's different every time. I never really know what we're going to be working with, what's going to come through, but everything's coming just from this expanded level of consciousness. You know, it's less about I'm channeling that being or that being, but it's collective energetics that are coming through I just want to facilitate all of us coming into recognition and acknowledgement of ourselves as true masters on this planet, and here for purpose.
For a reason. It's so interesting that you say that you were into it and then you went into the corporate world. I've heard that many times by people of your generation. it's like they're tapped into the knowledge, but they look out into the world and they don't see how they can, like how that can make them money, or how that can make them a career. There's no, up until now, I think that's changing now, but okay, so I know how to channel, I know how to meditate, and I can speak to my guides. So how do I make a living from that? And so I'll get a corporate job and, buy a house and have a mortgage and all that sort of thing. But and then the knock gets louder and louder and louder until you can't ignore it, and then you've got to figure out, how I turn my abilities into something that's a career or a life, really, a life. But Thirsty's here is.
I was in the spiritual closet somewhat for quite a long time. I was living the corporate life. I was doing the things. I was going to, working hard to play hard and all of that jazz. But then I'd get home at 3 o'clock in the morning and do channeled writing. I mean, it was just hilarious. I'd run off on the weekend.
I love that.
Our animals or something, but it was, it was
I love it. I love it. I love also that you had some dude in a bar, like, approach you. That's a little similar, because I was working on Hamilton Island. I was about early 20s, can't even remember, 21, I think. Yeah, and some guy in a bar approached me, and I'm thinking, he just wants to chat me up. And I didn't fancy him, and he's like, do you want to go for a ride in my little buggy? They have those little buggies on the islands, those little golf buggies. And as staff, I wasn't allowed to ride the buggy, so I said, yeah. And then my alarm bell should have been going off. He's like, do you want to come up to my room? And I really didn't, but I went. And then he started telling me about Shirley MacLaine's books, and we sat up all night until the sunrise talking about what was in the Shirley MacLaine books. So he was also there to activate me. He could have just been there to pick me up, but he was like, he activated me, spotted me and activated me. And I can't even remember his name or what he looked like. Do you remember the guy's name or what he looked like?
No, I don't.
No.
But since then, and more recently, over the last year, I've had 2 other experiences where I've met guys in bars. This time they're like part Māori. They're more connected to our Indigenous Maori culture here.
Yeah.
I have been taken on interdimensional journeys out of body with 2 of them. It's like I meet them and we're telepathically communicating, or physically communicating talking about spirituality, consciousness, those kinds of things. And then suddenly, boom, I'm flipped into another reality. And so it's been quite out there, because it's only happened at bars. And it's funny because my friend has a bar, so I do go and support her sometimes, or just hang out with her. But I think it's really interesting because a lot of the spiritual community, they're so like anti-alcohol, anti-bar, but look what they're missing out on, these connections with these spiritual masters who come and get you and flip you into another dimension.
I guess they're going to find you wherever you are. So if you're in a bar, they're going to find you. If you're in a supermarket, they're going to find you. Leslie says he sounds angelic. Yeah, a couple of little angels come to activate you. Yeah, they're going to find you wherever you are. Wherever you are. Yeah.
You're a bit disarmed, and you kind of don't think anything of it if someone random speaks to you in a bar, whereas even in the supermarket you might sort of think and you're busy doing your things, but I think it's just that space. And I don't know if I would have been able to have those other experiences where I literally have been in another dimension and traversing different dimensional spaces without that. Like, I'm not, if guy just kind of came up and talked to me on the street, like, I'm very friendly, but I don't know if I would have been in the space to drop into that and be able to do it. So yeah, it's been really, really fascinating, these really visceral experiences starting to amp up a lot, because, I wasn't even aware of my body and this physicality. It was a completely different dimensional experience, which, a lot of the time I'm getting information through my divine mind and seeing it with my eyes closed. But this was, like physical kind of things. And it took me quite a long time, because my physicality had been somewhere else as well. So I was like not that well after it for a week afterwards. The last one, it was quite interesting. Yeah.
Yes, no, I completely understand that. You've got to acclimate to it. You've got to acclimate to the frequencies. Yeah. When you get a frequency upgrade, you've got to be a vibrational match to it. And if you're not, you'll experience some unwellness, some purging, some pain. Yeah, you can. That happened to me again when I was young, masseuse. I started channeling when I asked the question. She had a picture of a guru in a frame, the person I was massaging. And I'm like, what's all this Indian guru stuff about? And they just opened my crown chakra and I started channeling. And I was like ill for about a week after that, because the information that was coming through me, the energy, the frequency was not a match to my default frequency of constant worry and self-criticism at the time, you know, and it can be painful. Yeah, you got to do the work. The personal growth work, darling one. So how did you make the decision to leave the corporate world and become a transformational coach? I mean, was that a big leap of faith for you?
I mean, I just knew that I didn't want to continue sort of climbing the corporate ladder. I knew that wasn't really going to satisfy my heart, and it wasn't going to help me tune into a level of service I was feeling called into. And so, you know, I just knew that I needed to explore where it was going to take me, and I didn't know where or what that was either. I mean, I knew I was passionate about things in the holistic spiritual energy world, but as you were saying before, I didn't think I could necessarily make a career out of it or any of that. And sort of at that point, when I was much younger, I was sort of like, what do I have, you know? So yeah, it's been a journey, and one that, you know, you're constantly somewhat looking for clarity on, that doesn't necessarily want to come, because the space of the unknown is where we have the greatest potential and greatest access. And, you know, I think a lot of the times I was trying to do it in a linear fashion, or I was trying to do it in a way that somebody else had told me to do it, that already existed. And that's just not what my template is about at all. So I would get incredibly frustrated. And that's where that kind of, you know, my passion about, you know, moving on from some of the old spiritual paradigm or anything really in the old framework of this construct of reality that we're currently operating out of comes from, because of that experience of my own journey, and realizing that a lot of it was actually keeping me at a level that wasn't really where I could have been, through the practices that just weren't a match for my template and didn't work, quite honestly. So that led me to explore things for myself, and I just kept getting told, like, don't take anyone else's stuff, don't take on, don't go and do this training, don't go and do that training, because, you know, we're not here to condition and program ourselves with all more stuff. I don't care whether it's alternative or spiritual or even in the mainstream, like all of it, we're trying to unprogram it all. We're trying to get back to the core and that beautiful crystalline frequency within,
exactly,
right?
Exactly.
So we just keep putting more and more and more stuff on top of it.
Well, exactly. I totally. Sorry.
Yeah, so that's been my journey, and I keep coming back to that. And you know, when we start to move into that space of incredible trust within, that's when things start to open up, and we're not meant to be here doing anything else that anybody else is, and we're not meant to be here not living in alignment with that template. You know, we're here carrying really specific medicine for everybody, and when we are, you know, get to the place where we're reconnected with that mastery within, when we actually are in acknowledgement and working with our true self, you know, from that space is where things start to come into more alignment, and we're allowing the divine intelligence to move through us and move us in the direction with divine will, rather than us thinking we know better than everything else. Meanwhile, like, we know that this intelligence has got a far bigger picture than we do, really, in a human, narrow, linear focused kind of experience.
Yeah.
So
what you're saying. What you're saying. So what you're saying about not getting conditioned in another programmed system. You know, that's why I've been speaking to a multitude of teachers for like 15, 16 years, actually 25 years, putting them on in events, because, there are so many different stories, and many people that reach out to me that are a part of like an organized religion or an organized system that have these rules in place, like this is the way you've got to do it. I say no to them. I say no, pretty much. I've had some monks and stuff on the shows just to hear their perspective, Buddhist monks and things like that. But we're not here to follow somebody else's system. We're here to tune in to our own wisdom, because everyone's connected to it. Like, everyone's connected to it. There are systems in place that can help you remember that connection. And then you can follow some rules for a while, and then you have to let go of them. Yeah.
This is the thing. Everything has been come onto the planet at a certain time, at a certain point of energetics and consciousness and all of that. And that's not where we are now, right? It's just not. And so it's interesting, because if we're holding on to the stuff from the past, even if it's like an amazing, 5,000-year-old whatever technique, that's not necessarily best for us in this moment of now, where we're at and these energy dynamics and all the rest of it. Like, it's so interesting because, when the heart technology stuff first came through to me, and I get a lot of interaction and information in my dream space. So a lot of contact, a lot of spaceships and coding comes in, and all sorts of stuff, and just all sorts of different guidance and training, and like all the rest of it is like a really active space. So originally in 2017, when I was in my dream space interacting with these 3 giant light beings that had showed up, and I was in the dream saying, but what about this ancient meditation technique? And they were like, no. I was like, but what about this healing modality? And they said, no. And they said, it only ever is about the heart. It has only ever been about the heart, and it will only ever be about the heart. It is all about heart technology. Heart technology is all you need. It is the most relevant and effective tool on the planet right now. And it was so vivid and strong. And I woke up thinking, what the hell is heart technology? Put it into Google, as you do, and a bunch of cardiac equipment showed up. Nothing energetic, nothing spiritual at all. It was quite hilarious.
Google. I don't know if Google knows.
On a vision quest over many years to get me to experience this heart technology that they were talking about, which is about the multidimensional technology of the heart, and using it in all these different ways when we start tapping into that. Like using it for alignment, using it for alchemy, using it for visioning and creation, as a portal, as an interdimensional portal, that we can connect in with multidimensional dimensions of, time and space at sacred sites and things like that. So, yeah, really, really interesting, because it came through in those teachings to me as well, that it was very much about us accessing our own wisdom and our own truth through the template that we are carrying, accessed through the heart. And, I think now what's coming through iterations beyond that, in my last tour, where I was touring around the Lower North Island and the South Island with my cosmic activation immersion experiences over the last 6 weeks. And it was all about this galactic heart consciousness that's coming through, because we are starting to remember ourselves as cosmic citizens, and starting to remember into these spaces and places that we have been in all sorts of different realities. And all of that is really starting to open up and come into being. And I don't think you can really necessarily inhabit that outside of that space of the heart, because it is connected to the 0 point energy. It's connected to our template. And there's so much going on there as the center of our being and our connection to all that is. So you kind of got to be operating in that space to kind of get anywhere, to be honest. So as soon as I started more going on that journey, things started really happening. And so that's why heart technology is the foundation of all of the work that I do. And I bring it into everything, and really embody that in my daily life as well. Yeah.
So galactic heart technology, as opposed to just heart technology, would be accessing the multidimensional self, as opposed to just accessing the toroidal field of the heart, which is that love, appreciation, gratitude, acceptance, unity energy. It's accessing that love, appreciation, unity, gratitude energy on different planes, different planes of existence throughout time and space. Is that what you would call galactic heart technology, as opposed to just heart technology?
Well, I think what you're talking about is more heart coherence, and that's just a foundational heart technique that is starting to connect us into that space. It's kind of foundational in that regard, where you're connecting and you're getting into that space of being with your heart. And it has all these amazing benefits, sort of harmonizing your entire body and being, all of the systems, bringing you into homeostasis, bringing a sense of calm, balancing your emotions, all of that good stuff. But what I'm talking about when I'm talking about heart technology is utilizing your heart once you're already in that space and you've activated that part with the coherence to do other things, and using it as a tool, a multidimensional tool within us. So using it with different alchemical practices to, go into timelines and adjust things in the past and create things in the future or whatever else, just for example, or, using it as a portal to connect into information that's available at sacred sites that's ready to be unlocked. When I'm talking about this new teaching that's merely more about galactic heart consciousness, that is a frequency that is becoming accessible to us as we start working with our heart technology more and more. And that is information about ourselves as a cosmic citizen and about all of the different gifts and abilities and learnings and knowledge and wisdom we hold from the galactic perspective, which hasn't been available to us because we haven't been ready for it until now. But now we're getting ready. And all of that's becoming online, you know, and we're realizing that everything is happening simultaneously. And if anything is in our frame of reference from a past life, which is really a parallel life, because it's all happening simultaneously, then it's just because it's feeding into a little bit of what's happening right at this present moment, you know. But I think all of these things can be rabbit holes down that you kind of get lost in, or end up being slightly disempowering, because you're sort of like, oh, well, until I've sorted this out from my past life, I can't move forward, or I can't get here. Whereas that's kind of not really the way it works. And I think some of these things have been distorted in the level of reality that we've been operating in, and now we're moving out of that. And that's when I talk about this old paradigm stuff that we're moving on from. There's a plethora of it, you know.
Yeah, there is a plethora of it, absolutely. And so I'm just thinking, you're a sort of slightly younger generation. I think that the younger generation, and you've got your kind of your conscious hippie mum who has maybe done the work, and that's like the older generation that does the work, cleaning up all that DNA, holding on to old resentments and, you know, stuff like that, because you've got to do that before you can even access that heart coherence. But you didn't have a lot of trauma in your family life or anything, did you? No, you did.
I would say, yeah, I did have a lot of that myself. Yeah.
That you had to.
It wasn't a sort of, you know, picket fence, rosy upbringing. It was actually quite dysfunctional in many ways. And very liberal, you know. So, and there was, yeah, it was a lot of like, you know, my dad was in advertising. It was like the rock and roll, you know, lifestyle of advertising, that version, because they were doing it in the 80s when it was like a free for all, and there was tons of money and drugs and alcohol and all the rest of it.
Like, rock and roll.
Yeah. So, you know, it was like, and that in itself, I think, can be a lot to handle for people, and also bring up certain things. So, you know, yeah, I haven't had the most straightforward or sort of, you know, like very, I wouldn't say coddled kind of upbringing in that way. And there were definitely bits of trauma along the way just from that dynamic and everything that brought, but there was also many gifts, and it also has obviously created the person I am today. And you know, my first book, it's that version of spirituality and my spiritual journey. It's kind of the rock and roll version with sex, drugs, and spirituality, and the unconventional path from dark to light, right? It's part of my blueprint. And I think, you know, just getting really honest about these things and understanding it doesn't have to be this puritanical version of spirituality either that actually leads to amazing results. Like, that's also part of just the old kind of moving out. Yeah,
it's so interesting the way we compartmentalize everything, you know. Like, I think that that's part of our conditioning as well. In order to be spiritual, that means you have to be like this. And I think that a lot of people think that spiritual and holy is the same thing. So you've got to be, you know, holier than thou. And but, you know, there's nothing that is not spiritual. There's the old saying where a kid asks a Buddhist monk, I'll give you an orange if you can tell me where God is. And the monk says, I'll give you two if you can tell me where God is not. I mean, spirituality is in all walks of life. You can't take spirituality out of the equation. You can't take it out of the equation. You can compartmentalize it as feeling good or feeling bad. And the better you feel, the more connected to source you are, and the worse you feel, the less connected. And maybe you make poor judgments when you're less connected, but it's all spiritual. There's nothing that is not spiritual.
Yeah, I mean, everything is ultimately born of the divine intelligence itself, you know, and we've been in this frame of reference or construct of reality where it's in polarity, and those are judged as either right and wrong or good or bad or whatever, but it's not really the truth of it underneath it all. And from the more expanded perspective, not really how it works. So, you know, we're also moving out of that and all of the ruction and chaos and upheaval on the planet. Is everything restoring itself back to divine order in some way eventually, you know, no matter what way you want to judge it. So,
but I love the name of your book, The Inside Hustle. It just speaks to me because all of us are hustling, you know, we're hustling inside ourselves. Do you want to go into that a bit more? Like, what is your understanding of the inside hustle?
Well, it's funny because that name sort of dropped in and channeled through to me. And, a lot of people would say, oh, it's not about the hustle anymore. And it isn't in that way. But what I was referring to, and I think the way it's meant, is that, the only hustle we really should be doing is the one that's inside ourselves, because that is the key to everything in existence, and the reality that we are bringing in, and our consciousness level and all of it. And so, this is truly an inside out job. And so that is the only hustle we should be taking place in, right? Because actually that is going to accentuate and bring into reality the supposed linear outside hustle of pushing, forcing, trying that we've been kind of conditioned into over many, many years of trying to make our way in this society and in this reality. So, that's the only hustle we really should be doing, is that inside hustle, and connecting to the deeper parts of us, connecting into our heart, getting to know ourselves, getting to know ourselves deeply and truly in these layers that aren't the personality self or the lower self that's rolling around and wanting to run the show and thinking it knows best. It's just getting to know these other parts of us, and they are more subtle and they are more quiet. And they are there for us if we're going to choose to meet them and acknowledge them, because what we focus into expands. And so we literally activate ourselves by allowing that for ourselves, because the one thing that the inside hustle is all about is how much I was getting in my own way.
Yeah.
And we are all getting in our own way a lot of the time.
Absolutely. We were talking about this yesterday in a group. I had a group, online group. I've got an online group called The Inner Sanctum. And there was a couple of us that met up yesterday. We're talking about disease and gallbladders and stones and resentment and carrying resentment. And I was talking about how we justify when we're resenting something. I was talking about somebody who was a very helpful person, but everything that he did, he resented it because he had this inside hustle, this hustle, these thought forms of, I have to do it, otherwise not a nice person, or I'm just doing it to keep the peace. And I'll just do what people ask me to do just to keep the peace. I won't argue because I'm a peaceful person, so I'll just keep the peace. But in that story, there was this great resentment, like people are always asking me to do things and I never get to do what I want to do. Like we're hustling with ourselves all the time, coming up with stories about what's good, and rather than, a bit of a snort there, rather than just feeling good. If you want to help someone, do it because it's a joy, not because you feel like you have to, just to keep the peace. And so to me, that feels like a inside hustle. What do you want to say about that?
Well, yeah, I mean, we've all been betraying ourselves or giving ourselves away in various different ways and forms over the course of our life.
Yeah.
That's ultimately what has been happening. And we don't even realize we're doing it because it feels so natural. But we are constantly doing that. And whether it's to fear, because you would be surprised at how many of the day-to-day minute decisions we make in our reality are driven by fear. I mean, wild. And I remember that was a big thing that came through in A Beautiful Radical Truth, my other book. It's like talks about that a lot. You're just totally unconscious and unaware of actually what is truly driven by fear and what you're making decisions on, and how you are choosing that to inform how you're moving through life based in the frequency of fear most of the time. So
exactly.
I think it's just a really interesting process where we are coming back into higher levels of awareness about those intricate things within us and how we are truly operating, because that's the most important thing. And we are not the victim of anything in this reality. We're literally here creating it for ourselves. And the more we can come into that and take radical responsibility for all of it, knowing that in contraction and expansion are cyclical, and we're going to be doing that as we move through these things, but we get to move through it sort of in a different way most of the time. And, after you've been doing a little bit of this work for a while, but we've got to be able to see that there's these patterns and loops and systems operating within us, within our own operating system, that could be with an upgrade, could do with an upgrade. And
could do with an upgrade. Yeah. Could do with some. I asked the group yesterday, what is it that you want to transform or change next year? Let's focus on that, moving into a year of great change. But I've got a great story about that. My guides were giving me lessons, as they did for many, many years, about how my thoughts create my reality. And I had owned and operated a furniture and homeware shop, and I had a manager, and I had closed it down. And she was going through a lot of turmoil in her relationship, and she was going to move out. The boyfriend had moved out. She was going to move out of her house. And my inside hustle was, I'm a single mother without a job, single mother with a daughter without a job. No real estate agent is going to rent me a house. So I'll move into your house, you move out, and then I'll find some other flatmates to move in. It sounded like a good plan, right? It sounded like a good plan. But the hustle was, the fear was, no one's going to rent me a house. See, I didn't recognize it at the time. She turned into a monster and ended up throwing us out of the house and locking us out of the house. I came home at midnight with my sleeping daughter and she wouldn't let me in the house and put all my stuff. Like, she just, because she was going through her dilemma with the boyfriend and she was in a whole lot of pain. And I remember asking my guides, how did I create this monster in my life, like this experience? And they said, because you made a decision based in fear.
Yeah.
And I said, did I? And they said, think about it. Like, we often don't see that our decisions are based in fear or based in lack or limitation. You didn't think that someone would rent you a house because you felt limited in some way. And I went, but I did. I so did. I did that, didn't I? I did that. Yeah, that's that inside hustle that we do, I think. Yeah, that's like we don't even see it sometimes.
Yeah. But I think, the inside hustle is about coming into those places where we are spending more time inside ourselves to create change on the outside. We can't expect experiencing anything differently if we're not shifting and changing stuff within us. I mean, it's simple as a vibrational match. You're always going to be vibrationally matching in your experience, whether it's to wake you up and make you aware of something you've done in fear, or whether it's to get you to come to terms with something that is a trauma response that's holding in your cells, or maybe it's about a repeated thought pattern that's become a subconscious program within you that needs to come into your awareness to shift out of. But that's the thing. It's like, it's an inside out game. And once you get a handle on that and realize this reality is somewhat metaphorical and a bit upside down, but you can read it and decode it for what it is, then that's when things get really interesting, because you get to reclaim your power. You get to realize you've got all the power in this whole situation. And actually, you can use it to start getting some really interesting stuff that is playing in expanded layers of reality rather than just the 2D kind of form. And that's what I love and very passionate about helping people do in their own lives. Yeah.
I've just looked at the clock and it's 11:11. I love that. Angel numbers. Leslie says sounds angel numbers. I want to remind people too, you're listening to ATP-Media, Accentuating the Positive, Expanding and Awakening Consciousness with Karen Swain on the United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network on 107.7 and 105.3 FM, syndicated radio all over the place. And my guest today is Joanna Walden, who is in Auckland, New Zealand. She's one of the speakers at the Cosmic Consciousness Conference coming up in Uluru in December. And great to be with you. Thanks, darling one, Lily says. And and so it'll be gorgeous out there in Uluru in December with a whole lot of conscious, beautiful, enlightened people. And there's a great diversity of speakers out there. Catherine and Mick have got some really great people going to Uluru, and lots of energy work has happened out there recently with different groups going out there. So it's going to be wonderful. If you want to, if you're in Australia or overseas or NZ or in the States and you wanted to join them, there's a link under the YouTube, Facebook, Odyssey platforms, Rumble platforms that you can press that gives you $50 off the conference, and you can read more about it. But I'm just looking behind you, Joanna. There is a painting, I don't know, an artwork. Did you do that?
No.
It looks like a heart. Yeah, go on.
My friend Mike Davison, who is quite an incredible artist, one of his early works. But yeah, it's sort of a Māori tiki, and it's made out of fish hooks, but also contains the heart as well, which, it's really... You can also see my gong. Which way am I moving?
The gong is beautiful.
Atlantis gong that I work with and channel different interdimensional energies through as well. So I use that in my cosmic activation sessions and my one-to-one work. And it's a bit of a different experience because I actually see beings come forth to tell me where to play. And they may be galactic beings, they may be elemental beings. Sometimes they're like Romans who are just human beings in that timeline.
They look Roman.
A real plethora, of different kinds. And some of these are animal beings, but I when I start to challenge tune in, when I'm working with the gong, they come forward. I see them and they tell me where to play, and I often see different sacred geometry to also weave in through that as well. And people have pretty transformative and profound experiences, I've got to say. In my recent tour, people were meeting galactic beings that they'd never met before or had access to. Understanding parts of themselves that dropped in. That was a big aha moment. All sorts of amazing stuff to help people's personal journey, which is beautiful. So I love working with that gong. It's a very special. It's just been on tour. Loves to go on tour and move around the country despite being 22 kilos and massive.
I have to say, I just love gong journeys. I've had such amazing journeys, transformative journeys in gong journeys. Just the gong is amazing. But what I wanted to say about that painting, talking of beings, is to me it looks like a mantid head. Like, do you know the mantis ET beings? The mantid?
They came to me a lot when I was living in Brazil. I had a lot of interaction with things. Yeah.
And how did they come to you? What did that look like?
Yeah, again, they were coming to me in the dream space, but then also physicality, because there's, Brazil's full of insects, right? And they still come to me a lot. Like, I constantly have pregnant praying mantises in my room and them birthing tons and tons of babies, and all the babies hanging out of the room all the time, every summer. Yeah, it happens. So they spend a lot of time hanging out in ceremony and in the lounge. Sometimes I get a lot of the mantis beings, but in their sort of like ET version of themselves, they came to me in the dream space, and I was just having sort of interactions. Although I can't remember. It was quite a while ago now. I can't remember what exactly they were bringing through, but I sort of remember like that was me familiarizing myself with them and just getting to know them a little bit better. And it's funny because we were talking about the puritanical version of spirituality and all that. And one of my funny stories from Brazil is actually when I met and he was actually in Argentina, not Brazil, a 84-year-old shaman called Hugo. And, I was thinking, I'd just come out of a spiritual retreat in Brazil, and I was, being on this puritanical buzz, and I was having my vegan, whatever it was to eat. And he just sort of laughed at me, and he was having his like meat and 3 veg, and he had a cask of red wine that he was just pouring a plethora of. But then, and then he charged his remote control on a crystal, and, he would interact with ET beings in spaceships who came and visit him 3 times a week. I mean, it's just so hilarious. Like, I was like, oh, Hugo, man after my own heart. I mean, I just loved it. But it was very funny because I was in such a like puritanical buzz at that point that I was like really insistent on being that way. And he was just the entire opposite. And it was just hilarious.
I know people like that too. I have to say, it depends on the level of consciousness you're carrying. When you are a really high consciousness, you can enjoy the poisons of the 3D world. Like, you can drink to your heart's content, smoke and carry on, and it doesn't affect you physically or energetically. But people that are moving out of like what we were talking about, like out of resentment and fear, and like it really does help to clean up your diet and your lifestyle to help you move to that consciousness. But I have met many people, like you say, that hold this really high level of consciousness and nothing phases them. Like, they're, red wine, meat on the barbie, have a few drinks, and then they're like communing with beings all across the cosmos, and they can leave their body at will, and they can project their consciousness. They can do anything, you know what I mean? And it's also engage.
The of this reality are here to be enjoyed on many levels, and we're the ones that touch them, and that's when it causes problems in the body a lot of the time and things. And I just think it's yes, there has been a lot of poisoning of the water and all that kind of thing as well. But equally, if we are conscious enough in the moment to be blessing everything that's coming, that we're taking into our vessel, and not having any judgment over it of any kind, you're literally assisting it vibrationally to come into union and harmony with you. And therefore, but we're not really practicing that all the time. Like, a lot of people aren't in that realm, and also they don't kind of believe it for themselves because they're not in the knowing of themselves as a true master. And
Absolutely.
So it all plays into it, right? That it potentially doesn't work, and people get disillusioned and whatever else.
Again,
part of the journey of reclaiming our mastery in this reality is, not operating in these in those kind of spaces where it's like things are working against us all the time, or the view that we're the victim, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Judgment plays a big role. I once knew a woman, she's since left her body, but she was a homeopathic practitioner. And she was one of those people that just avoided any sort of toxin or poison, like didn't drink tea or coffee, and like everything, it was fussy about it, really fussy about it. Everything had to be pure and organic and avoid it. And then she got sick. She got really sick.
Yeah.
And I met her at a friend's place years ago now. We were up in the country sitting at lunch and talking about it. And then she tried all her healing modalities to heal her cancer, including her homeopathy, she was passionate about, and then eventually went the chemo route. And her and her husband were talking at the time about the irony of this, that she had tried all her life to avoid any sort of toxin, and now she's sticking out her arm and getting injected in a cocktail of poisons called chemotherapy that was supposed to save her life. And they were just talking about the irony of it. But and Anita Moorjani talks about this, trying to not get cancer, and she was a vegan and a yoga and a meditator, but her fear of cancer created the cancer. And when she died, you know her story, don't you? And she had that NDE. Her guide said to her, go back and enjoy your life and don't be scared. It's your fear that creates. So that's true. These people that I know that can do anything are fearless, like they have no judgment over what they're ingesting. And there's no fear at all. And
there's really something to be said from that. I hope that lands for everyone. It's a really big point, you know. I mean, I think putting ourselves in these places of being more fearless or having to face some of those fears, it might be really, you know, like a tiny thing, or it might be a big thing, you know. But I think it's really important to be moving through that. And you know, it's hilarious whenever I'm sent on a spiritual mission by spirit, or things are being facilitated and orchestrated. I mean, it's not for the faint-hearted, I'll tell you that much. Like, you can't be really fearful doing the work that I do when I'm running off to sacred sites and trying to go to this mission and that mission and get to this place without permission, and, you know, or over some treacherous path. Or, I mean, it's pretty adventurous. Like, you know, not everyone's cup of tea, that's for sure. So I think, you know, part of it is when we get to access these other places as well, you've got to be fearless to get there. And that's just a very physical kind of representation of that, you know, but equally it's, you know, non-physical and physical as well. But
I'd love to hear about your journeys through the sacred sites of New Zealand, because New Zealand is such an ancient land. I mean, the whole world is ancient, but New Zealand is such a beautiful land. My father was born in New Zealand, and I had family over there in Auckland who have left the planet, but I used to go and visit them in Auckland, and I traveled around. I haven't explored much of New Zealand. I'd love to go and explore more of it, actually. But so what's your story with the sacred sites? Like, what's there? And
I find it really interesting because, you know, when I was living in New York and London, and especially in Europe and the UK, visiting a lot of sacred sites there, like, I wasn't getting nearly as much information as I did when I came back to New Zealand 15 years later and started tapping into the sacred sites there. And I don't think it's just because I'm from here. I feel and can sense a different kind of lightness in the energy. And I think also some of the other sites, that are supposedly ancient sacred sites, are kind of been corrupted. The energy is just not there anymore. So when I came back and I was going to specific sacred sites that I've been recommended, or finding my own and actually activating the energy and figuring out new ones, that I was having such a more visceral experience and getting so much more downloads of information and having these just really cool experiences of other beings and information and, you know, like all sorts of stuff. And there's a lot lying around, probably in your own backyard even, wherever you are in the world, actually. But New Zealand specifically is really what I figured out about it. I think it's aligned with these new consciousness energies that are being birthed back into the planet and brought back online. And I feel like my template's carrying a lot of that. I'm much more kind of aligned in those energies than I am in some of the older stuff that has been and gone. And so I started exploring it as soon as I got back, and I went on a sacred mission, first to like Taupo in the national park area in the center of the North Island, And there's a beautiful lake there called Lake Rotopunamo just out of there that is like one of the water spinner wheels of the earth. And it links up to 4 other spinner wheels for the elements and connects and is operating different frequencies on a global level. But also there's, more famously, is Castle Hill down in the South Island, which the Dalai Lama visited in 2002 and said it's the spiritual center of the universe, he called it.
Did he? Wow.
Yes, he did. And that's known as sort of an ancient Waitaha mystery school, and Waitaha meaning an Indigenous people who were here kind of before the Māori, actually, which is sort of quite controversial in New Zealand, as you can imagine. But you know, and then interestingly, Freddie Silver has been, you know, when I read his book, The Missing Lands, he talks a lot about different energies, and he talks about a link between the Waitaha, the Egyptian, and the Andean energies, specifically at Castle Hill, which is part of a trifecta of sites in the area known as the birthplace of the gods, where these you know, god beings were kind of procreating with human beings, I think. But there's templates and energetics related to all sorts of different multidimensional energetics running around in that space and held in this supposed ancient Waitaha mystery school. And so I'm actually going to be taking people, because I channel through multidimensional energy activations to use at site, at these sites, and guide people in using the heart technology, because that's how you can access more information in these spaces. So, you know, in every retreat I've ever done, that's part of it, because I love activating at sacred sites. So it's definitely involves, you know, activities like that, as well as the general kind of sound healing and ceremonies and things. But, you know, these sites I'm taking people to help activate themselves, because these sites are carrying so much information and coding and stuff that's been lying dormant. And it's up to us and what we're carrying to show up and be there and allow ourselves the experience of dropping in. And even if you're not feeling anything or you're not having a visceral experience, you're there with the intention to receive. And so, you know, your body is a technology in itself, which is going to be helping you out with that, right? And especially if we are working with our multidimensional mastery and invoking that forth to guide our way and operate for us in the background, you know, the human self and the mind can just relax into the process. And so, you know, yeah, these sites, there's new information coming out, I think, again, about 2 other sites connected to the birthplace of the gods in the South Island of New Zealand. But I have been guided that that's going to be really quite important, and for me to take people there, more important. So I'm actually working on a tour for next year and the year after. And I've been talking to some American communities that I tapped into when I was on tour last year in America for 3 months. And so, you know, I'm really excited about bringing people from all over the world to experience the change and the shifts and the acceleration that I've had in my journey, which I think was because I spent so much time running around these sacred sites. And some of the areas are kind of out of bounds, but I'm carrying, and I've picked up a lot of the coding. So when I'm with the ones that we can access, when we can get to those ones, I'm kind of bringing the full set, you know. So that's what's really, really fun about it. And, you know, I'm so excited about going to Uluru, because I love working at sacred sites as well.
Another sacred site. So Leslie asked here, how do we find these new or unidentified sacred sites? Great question, Leslie.
Yeah. So you feel your way through it, and you are present, and you are in your heart. You know, I have just been in a space where I have, when they've opened up to me, I've just been in an open space. I haven't been expecting anything, right? Get the mind out of the way for starters. You're just going there to be. But if you're not in the heart, you're not going to kind of anchor in properly. So that's really important key, is just to get yourself into the heart in any space, and just then you can see what's there. But, you know, when I found it, the energy's presented itself, and I feel, hear, see energy in different ways, depending on what's moving. But it's very much feeling our way through, and feeling is really our superpower at this stage of the game on this planet. We've got to be feeling, and you can only truly really feel when you have reconnected back into your heart space. You know, I remember, 15 years ago, I didn't know what I was feeling. I was really sort of closed down in so many different ways, and had a lot of different ways that I didn't know. I was in an overwhelm of emotion, and things weren't clear. And I had to step myself out of that and come into a space where, you know, I was now where I am today. It's very different, but you know, the feeling is the way through. It's about getting that mind out of the way and allowing our other senses to kind of come in and give us information, and being open enough and quiet enough to receive whatever it is without any, you know, designs on what it could be or pressure on ourselves of like, oh, I've got to have an experience because I'm at this site. But open to connecting with energies at any site or in your backyard is the first key, right? Because everything is down to our intention. Like, we've got to have an intention and a focus where we put our energy to be able to create anything in this reality. Yeah.
Stay open. That's a beautiful song. Stay open, stay open. Yeah, opening the heart, opening the mind. Yeah, Leslie, you can do it. Yeah, she says that I agree, can also be at my house. Absolutely. Imagine the generations that are buried beneath us. You know, like there's amazing things all over the planet.
Everything's connected up through the ley lines or the meridian lines that go through the earth. You know, like there's a whole network of energetics that are running that we have the, you know, possibility to connect into if we just are conscious enough in the moment to do so, you know. And yeah, there's all sorts of exciting stuff out there. I highly recommend exploring at non-sacred sites and really just, because then you start to experience the energy in sort of a different way. I remember finding quite a few sites on Great Barrier Island, actually. And when I took people on retreat there, they were like, whoa.
So is Great Barrier Island in New Zealand? I'm not sure of my geography. So it's an island off where? North Island or South Island?
Gulf here, out of Auckland.
Out of Auckland, okay. So Auckland on that side has the black sand beaches, right? Depicted in The Piano, I think, that movie, The Piano with Sam Neill. Is that side of Auckland, or is it the other side?
The other side. So the west coast has all the black sand beaches and is very rugged and wild. Also lots of energies and portals and caves and things like that. But where I'm talking about is the other side, out of Auckland Harbour into, you know, the Waitemata, where there's quite a few different islands out there, one of them being Great Barrier Island, not to be confused with the Great Barrier Reef in Australia. Right, an island in New Zealand. But you know, I don't know really. I wasn't told about any sacred sites. I went and explored for myself just to see what was there. And there's a whole ton of crystal running through that island. I found tons of crystal while I was there, and I took people to a crystal beach, which was really cool. Crystal
black sand. The black sand is incredible. When I was there, I remember like just driving around Auckland or just outside of Auckland, there are all these big mounds. What are they called? They're everywhere. They're sort of like
they're just hills, but they're dormant volcanoes.
But they're everywhere. These sort of, it's not like like they're little but big also. But it's bizarre.
More like a hill, but most of them are dormant volcanoes. Exactly. We've got over 50 volcanoes in Auckland, and they're all, a lot of them are like these mounds, and actually I did go on a secret spiritual mission to one of them and to get into the crater, which technically you're not supposed to do, but I had the calling from spirit to do it, and I know in my being that I'm meant to do those things and go to these places sometimes, even if the outside world is telling me you're not allowed to do it. So I take my spiritual credibility here and knowing that I'm supported and I'm always allowed into these places and nothing really ever locks me out of them. But I did go down into the crater during I think it was a super full moon a couple of years ago, and there was one of those big halos, a rainbow ring around the moon as well. And it was really interesting because all of the volcanoes are actually communicating to the cosmos. And when I got into the crater, I could hear and feel and see these frequencies of these energies that the supposed dormant or dead volcano was highly active, and I could hear it and feel it and know it, right? So, you know, it's just hilarious what we think of as dormant, or, you know, it's very much alive. And I was really interested to feel into the energetics of what it's communicating to the cosmos, because everything is related to the stellar bodies in some way, you know. It's like everything. I think we kind of forget sometimes, because we're out of our multidimensional memory, that everything in this reality, including the earthly kind of pieces, are holding celestial information for us and are connected to different celestial aspects above. And therefore, that is a whole bunch of plethora of information, depending on what dimension it's coming from as well, that you can tap into by connecting with physical nature in our reality, right? I think sometimes people think, oh, cosmic, I've got to go out there, or I've got to go to this planet or whatever, but it's actually infused and encoded absolutely everywhere.
It's all here. It's all
That's
here.
Right. That's right. The stones,
Here.
the trees, all of it, it's all here for us. And we really do have access to our cosmic consciousness also when we get into that space within us, where we acknowledge it within ourselves and acknowledge who we really are and allow ourselves to be that.
Yeah. Leslie says it's also, I don't know where you are. Where are you in the world, Leslie? She says there should be a lot of hot springs there too. Yeah, there is. There's like a lot. What's the famous one? I went there with my daughter that you go and you see all the hot springs. It's really famous with the tourists. What's it called?
Well, there's many in Rotorua.
Rotorua. That's right. Yeah.
There's many, but they're littered all around the place. There's some in Great Barrier. Part of the retreat that I was doing, again, where I took them to the hot springs, hot springs are amazing for integration when we've been doing a lot of energy work. So after all the activations at different sites and hiking in between and doing sound healing and yoga and whatever, towards the end, it's usually some kind of hot spring experience to help anchor around and get people embodying some of the energetics that are coming in.
And it smells like sulfur. So Alison is a New Zealander. There are so many important messages for me at the moment. Tar heaps, she says. And as for NZ, I lived in Wellington. Oh no, she lived in Wellington for 2 years as a child. Always felt a special, comfortable energy there. When I go back, I cry. I've never been to Wellington. My father was born there, but I've never been there. I haven't explored the South Island. Oh, Leslie's in Oregon, she says. Yeah, have you ever been? Japan has been my volcanoes and hot springs.
Japan is on my list at the moment. I've been
Japan.
I've been to Oregon. I've done a lot in the States, obviously, because I lived there for 6 years in New York, and then I've been back for 3 months on tour. And actually, when I went back last year, it was from late August right through to November, and I was directed into some pretty interesting energetics in all of the ancient Pueblo sites, which I had no knowledge of at all. But I was literally sent on a guided mission to different ancient Pueblo sites, some of them in Colorado, which I was never intending to go to, but I got guided to go there, so I had to go. And then some of them in New Mexico. And it was really wild how much spirit wanted me to go there, to the point where, you had to do a paid tour. And I kind of wanted to be there on my own, but that was not possible. And then they got me onto the tour, even though it was sold out, even though there was, supposedly no tickets available or no other way to get in there. And then when I went in there, I was sitting there at one of them, and I was just so much energy coming into my body that it was overwhelming, to the point that I couldn't really decipher any of it. But I knew I was getting a really strong and powerful injection of this energy to trigger whatever was going on within me. And sometimes it's not instantaneous. Sometimes I don't understand what's going on, to be honest. I'm not able to decode everything, but sometimes it will unwrap itself later, and these packets of information come forth, and then other key points come into place that allow me, oh, I get it now, it's landed, right? So, a lot of the way it works for me, sometimes it's not available in the moment, and I think it's really important for anyone who wants to access these places, just because you kind of may or not feel anything happening, or you can't understand it in the moment. Don't worry, keep going, keep doing it.
Keep going, absolutely. You've got a channel message that you wanted to read out too, that I want to get in before we finish. But I also want to get into the politics, because you were saying that something's going down. There's a viral video going around at the moment. I've seen it on X and I've seen it on Instagram, of someone in New Zealand politics doing the haka, a woman. She stands up and she starts doing the haka, and the speaker tries to shut her down. No. And then she keeps going, and then all these other people stand up and they do the haka in the politics.
It's going around everywhere, as are many speeches in Parliament now, because, there's been in the protest of, I think it may even be peaking today or getting to Wellington today, but this hikoi, which is a journey to go and protest the sort of, there's been a proposed bill that wants to sort of reinterpret the Treaty of Waitangi, or what that means to, you know, they say supposedly have equal rights between everyone, rather than, you know, calling out Māori specifically and whatever else. And quite honestly, I haven't looked into the background of any of it in such a deep way to fully understand the differences myself and all of it. But I just see what I see online, but there's, you know, it's a lot of protest going about it, because they're sort of saying, no, well, that's not really what it means, and that's not how it's written, and la 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 la. And, you know, this is really important, obviously, for our country as being foundational, and the Indigenous people being honoured in this, and the land and all of it. And so there's been a lot of ruction and protest and things happening in the moment, and that's where that viral video would have also come from, because it's kind of in Parliament at the moment, and you know, everyone is, you know, reacting to it. So I had a lot of friends who were on the protest, and just joining in and support, and allowing these energies to move, because, you know, I think we've got a lot of energies wanting to move out of this old way, and also not wanting to be controlled anymore. Yeah.
For people that don't know what the haka is, so I'm sure you've seen it if you look up news, if you look up haka, it's the traditional call dance that they do. Pardon?
It's a wall dance traditionally. Yeah.
It's traditionally a wall dance where they make really sort of scary faces, and they do this dance, and it's very aggressive. It's an aggressive dance. Someone tried to teach me, someone came over from New Zealand, a spiritual teacher, and he was trying to teach us the haka, I remember, and I couldn't get into it because it's an aggressive act, like it's a masculine male aggressive act, and I couldn't tune into I couldn't do it. Like I didn't want to tune into that sort of aggression, but it sends a point across. You put your point across when you do the haka.
That's why they do it at the beginning of a rugby match, our international rugby match.
Mm-hmm.
Why all the players will stand up and do the haka, because it's sort of like a strong, sort of
energy, very strong,
ready for battle kind of vibe.
It's a real masculine energy. So it's interesting when you see women do it too. They're really tuning into that masculine energy.
I think it's traditionally by the masculine more than the feminine. But,
exactly. Probably in the past, women weren't allowed to do it, were they? And maybe
no.
Yeah,
and I think that's somewhat changed, but I'm actually doing a year-long Māori study right now that I'm just at the beginning of, because I want to really go into more of this information myself to understand more about the wisdom that comes through and their connection to the celestial bodies and the Pleiades with Matariki. I find it really fascinating. And so, I skipped a lot of that at school because I grew up in Melbourne. So now I'm getting to kind of like go into it in a deeper way, which is really nice. And,
what I found... what I found going to New Zealand is there's such a bigger presence everywhere of the Māori culture than there is of the Indigenous Australian culture, the original Australian people. Like you arrive at airports and there's Indigenous art everywhere and stuff like that, but you go into the city and they're nowhere, even the television. But in New Zealand, they say every newsreader says, what do they say at the beginning? They say a Maori word. What's that word that they say, like welcome, hello, or something in Maori? So I found that beautiful.
I don't watch the news. I'm terrible.
Yeah,
so, I'm so out of like MSM that I don't even watch it, so I wouldn't know. But it'll be kia ora or
or something like that. Yeah. So also in Australia, somebody sent this to me today. The misinformation and disinformation bill that they were trying to pass in the Senate was rejected. The censorship of anything outside a narrative, which is, I think it's good news, because they talk about the disinformation, misinformation. They're trying to stop people, spreading disinformation online. But a lot of that disinformation is like the truth, the truth of what's really going on, that they don't want you to know what's going on. So that was blocked in Australia today. So that's a bit of a win in politics for Australian politics. And of course, in the States, there's been massive a change of government in the States. Well, there will be a change of government. You either love it or hate it, but it's creating a lot of controversy across the world.
Yeah, well, it's all right.
Australia with the voice of referendum.
But I think in all of this, it's really important to know that the divine intelligence is working through all things to bring things back into divine order, and everything is working for us. And it's not to us. And
Yeah.
there is an intelligent force, whether we're conscious of it or not, that's working through everything. But people want to get up in arms and be like, no, that's wrong, or this is right. And like, that's just a thing of the past. Like, we're not operating that
Trust
anymore.
it. Yeah.
And actually this channeled message that I've got is a little bit about that, and this whole idea about, you know, what we see, that's also not the full picture, right? We're looking at it one dimensional view of what is transpiring that we think, that's also been infused and fed with all sorts of information, depending on where that's coming from, that may or may not be supposedly true. And, you know, it's funny because I remember a channeled message that came through for one of the cosmic activation sessions that I did in my last tour. And it's all about this fact that truth is dynamic, and that humanity's been called to loosen their grip on supposed truth, because given the ever-expanding omniverse, the interdimensional view or perspective, that's like not being taken into account. And so it was almost like this laughter, because it was like, how can you just be trying to grip on and prove what is truth and what is not truth when you're not even looking at the interdimensional version of things, like this microscopic like thing? And it was almost like they're laughing, like this actually.
I know. Humanity is the best sitcom show in the universe. I tell you, they sit back, they eat their popcorn, and they watch us, and they just laugh and laugh. And I have to say that the US politics has been the most entertaining thing I've seen. I'm obsessed with it. I never tune into Australian politics, but the US politics is so entertaining. It really is the best sitcom show on earth, and it has been for at least 8 years or so. 8 or 10 years. But let's hear this message that you channeled for us today. Let's go for it. You wanted to read out, you had a channeled message you said you got before the show.
Yeah, absolutely. So for those of you who aren't familiar with my work, you know, I'm not sure if I mentioned earlier, but I channel by writing. So it was a written message, and I just get into my heart space, and I tune into an expanded version of consciousness that becomes available to me, and I write what I hear until it stops. And generally, that's how, you know, I wrote A Beautiful Radical Truth, and that's how I do channeling for clients, for, you know, people for their personal journeys as well, as my cosmic activation sessions and all the work I do. And so what I love people to do before receiving it is to just close their eyes for a moment and bring your hands to your heart space in the center of your chest, and just take a nice breath to breathe into the heart and just breathe out. And you can almost imagine with every breath like an elevator of where you are focused in your mind space, descending through from the center of your head right down through your eyes and nose and chin and throat. And with every breath, just anchoring yourself and your consciousness in the center of your chest at the heart space. And when you feel like you've landed there, I want you to think about something that makes you smile, because that also instantaneously connects you into the heart. And then just let's open to receive. Sometimes it's not about each individual word. Sometimes it's about the frequency that's coming through all of it that wants to attune you in the totality of all that it is. So just intend to open and receive, and I'll kick it off now. At this time, you experience a truncated version of reality that is devoid of its ability to serve you at face value. For in the chaotic frequencies that prevail, the calling is to go within. Go within to find the answers. Go within to find your center. Go within to discern what is aligned for you. Go within to acknowledge your mastery. And go within to attain and activate wisdom and knowledge outside of everything gone before. Seeing through that which is cultivated from the been and gone will assist you to expedited waters of clarity and convenience. Viruses of the mind plagued the collective consciousness, perpetuating the distortions of inorganic nature. However, these cease to contain energy and will dissolve come what may. Attuning to your mastery through embodiment of the consciousness of the heart will assist in the process of operating outside of the falsities in the illusion of what is. exiting your current playing arena in favor of the unknown is preferable. Sitting squarely with your own frequency, untainted by perceived knowings, is gained access to from the portal of your heart. Take a breath and sink into the resonance in this space now. Feel your heart beating with the heart of the earth, the heart of the cosmos, and all hearts combined from this planet and beyond. Entrain with each breath into the portal of your heart a little deeper and into the oneness of all that is, connected to your unique frequency of the true interdimensional self that resides within you. And from this place, with your next in-breath, invite the frequency of your galactic heart consciousness to connect into your master DNA, into the master DNA helix. Intend for your divine codex to be enacted in the light of the cosmic consciousness contained here. Feel the divine intelligence move through you and know yourself as the light you truly are, as a multitude of multidimensional refractions to restore the memory of your pristine glory and the celestial medicine you contain for the benefit of all. So just take a breath and allow that to land within you, wherever it needs to, maybe sending it into the tight spaces. And I can put that written message in the comments and some of the postings, or send it to you, Karen, so that we can allow people to read it. But what I find with these messages is that often, people will have an experience with it, and sometimes they'll feel the energy from it, because it's really just, sometimes the words aren't even available to correspond with the energy that's coming through in the moment. But what I do find is that a lot of people, clients will be working with a message ongoing for months, because each time there's an frequency injection within them, which is recalibrating them. And then they'll message me and be like, oh my God, it just landed. And I understand all the stuff that I never understood before. And it's literally downloading these packets of information available to us. So that's the way it works. It's not necessarily say either. It's frequencies that you're working with, and then they entrain by sort of the repetition of us bringing it into our body and being in different ways. But, it was touching on a lot of the things that we were talking about leading up to that as well. And yeah, encouraging all of us to really delve into that heart, to disconnect from these other aspects of reality that are kind of keeping us in the jail cell, and whether we, are aware, that's part of our responsibility for ourselves. So yeah, everything is in our ability to shift and change out of, and we've got so much more power than we know. And it's really exciting times, and this heart is so important through this time, because this helps you discern. This helps you access the knowingness that is outside of all of this blah, blah, blah chaos, this right, wrong. None of that is relevant and true. You're going to get your best answers in this very confusing stage that we're in this chaotic reality from here.
Yeah, absolutely. Beautiful wisdom, darling one. Thank you so much for coming on the show. You've been listening. Sorry, go on.
Thank you for having me so much. I've really enjoyed it. And I hope everyone who can make it to Uluru for the Cosmic Consciousness Conference in December will come and say hi if you happen to have caught this this interview or conversation. And you're welcome to reach out anyway. My books are also on Audible if you're wanting to hear them in my dulcet tones, and they're very activating text. So you can go and check those out on Amazon or whatever as well.
If you are interested in going to the Cosmic Consciousness Conference in Uluru in December, there is a link underneath and a code, my name, Karen, all caps, that will give you a discount. And it should be a great conference. It should be a great conference. Thanks for showing up. Joanna actually showed up because somebody else had pulled out this week, so she showed up really quickly. So I appreciate you for doing that. And it was great to talk to you and meet you and hear your story today. And it's been a blessing. Thank you so much.
So fun. Thank you so much, Karen, and this amazing work that you're putting out there, and being able to give people access to all sorts of different perspectives from all sorts of walks of life is really, really, really beautiful. So thank you for all the work you're doing.
Thanks, darling one. Yeah, it's been a wild week this week, hasn't it? We've got a few minutes left with what's been going on in the States. I'd love to hear your comments. Are you happy? Are you sad? In Australia, we had our mainstream news programs going down to Bondi Beach in Sydney, asking people what they thought of the election results in the US, which I found really interesting because we're so engaged as Australians in this result. And I know I was. Louise sends amazing. Thank you. I think that's for you, Joanna, not for the election results, because there's a bit of a delay between what I say and what comes through. But yeah, no matter what you say, whether you love it or hate the results, I've been lots of people have been upset around me, and a lot of people have been elated. But yeah, it's been an interesting time. She's happy. You're happy with the results. Good on you, darling. Yeah, whoever wins, you should be happy with the results, because your unhappiness is only hurting you. It's not hurting the person that got in or didn't get in. We forget how powerful we are, just like Joanna says, that yes, you didn't vote for the first time. Realize, yeah, because in Australia, we have to vote. It's mandatory for us to vote. But in the States, obviously, there's so many people. If 350 odd million people voted, that would be huge. I think that they say around, I don't know, almost 2 million vote. I don't know what it is, but yeah, interesting times. What do you want to transform and change next year? 2025 coming into a year of transformation. Love what they're saying about health. Louise says, yes. Some really interesting things. There's going to be a lot of change. I think that there's going to be a lot of attempt of change, but there's probably going to be a lot of pushback. Who knows? We are in extraordinary times, and we're seeing change, just like Joanna said, we're seeing change in the New Zealand Parliament. We're seeing change in the Australian Parliament. We're seeing change in the US Parliament. I wonder if there'll be change in the Canadian Parliament. Yeah, this is true. Alison says she's amazed at how many people follow the MSN narrative. Absolutely, Alison, it is true. Yep. I could talk forever and ever about that, but I won't go into that on this show, because, you know, we're on certain platforms that are the the mainstream narrative. But yeah, what do you want to change next year in your life? How do you want to transform yourself next year? Because what we transform in ourselves, we transform for the whole collective, for the world. We are all connected. And so whether we're happy or sad about the results, we can transform the way we feel about it. We can transform. And just like Joanna was saying, there is always a perspective that maybe we don't see because we're in judgment. I remember when he got in 2016, that really shocked me. I was really shocked at that result. I'm like, no, my little nephew said to me, I was at my brother's place, oh, you know, Trump got in. I said, no, that didn't happen. And I thought, well, there's an intelligence to the universe. We are going through this massive shift. And so there's an intelligence to the universe that knows what it's doing. So maybe there's something happening here that I'm not seeing because I'm in my judgment. Maybe I need to look into this more deeply. Instead of judging it and saying good, bad, with anything that happens, you know, why is this happening? What is the purpose for this? There's something behind this that I need to investigate. And that's where I went. And I went down the rabbit hole of looking into what was happening. And it was eye-opening, I have to tell you. Because I want to be able to detach from 3D judgment. That's a good thing to change next year. That's a great thing to change. That's a big one. Yeah, to change from our 3D judgment. Yeah, I think that instead of going into judgment about whatever happens in whatever parliament, in whatever country, or wherever, whatever happens in our life, instead of going into good or bad judgment of right or wrong, go into curiosity. Like, there's a purpose for this in my life. And what is that purpose? Maybe we're diagnosed with some horrible disease we don't want, and we can say, oh, this is the most terrible thing that's happened. Like, there's a reason that this is happening to me? What is the message here for me? How am I learning from this? How am I growing from this? How am I learning to transform the way I think and feel? Whether it's about a politician or about something happening personally, we're always given the opportunity to transform and change the way we think and feel, and move into a more heart-centered coherence, a more loving perspective, both with ourselves and with life indeed. And so when we do that, yeah, life changes. Time to go. Big love to all of you. Thanks everyone for listening and watching. You are an amazing audience. Thanks, Alice and all the girls. Bring more joy, more joy, more joy, more joy. Yeah, absolutely, into your life. And I will catch you again next time. Who's on the show next time? I can't remember. Somebody fabulous. I'll see you later. Bye for now.